at some point I need to speak about this.
Yeah.
A lot of people that come from where I come from, especially in the black community, it's quite taboo.
The notion of having one shot.
Yeah, the stress of it, going home, going back to my apartment, crumbling as I got out of that cab, as I shut that door. Every take was different. When they shut that prison door on me, I was like, wow, like, how did I end up here? I started to take advantage of the position that I was in and let me sit down and analyze where it went wrong. From day dot, my mum has been saying, you gotta work harder. You know, you're a young black boy from Southeast London. You know, you're never gonna get everything the same way as your white counterparts. It was never about the drink or the drugs. I had a problem within me, but what was needed was a catalyst, was my daughter. She looked at me and she was like, I don't want you to live here anymore, Daddy. And that broke me.
Hello, Ashley.
Hey.
It's so good to see you.
You too.
You good?
Yeah, very good. Very good.
You've had one hell of a year already.
Yeah, it's been a roller coaster.
Not even halfway through, and
No,
it's been relentless.
It's been pretty overwhelming, to be fair, at times. But I'm enjoying it.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah, I can't complain.
I mean, I've got to start by saying congrats on Adolescence, because it's it's not only made a huge impact just for people that love watching great drama, but it's had a political impact. It's changed how we view the world, I would say. Culturally, it's made a huge impact. What's that like from your point of view, being so in the thick of it, not knowing what the reception of it would be? How have you found that?
Good. I feel like it's really good. It's always, you always set out, right, to do more than just make an entertaining show, like especially when you're talking about something quite specific, right? So you want to create conversation. I guess none of us knew how much conversation it would create. And it's like the gift that keeps on giving. It's like it's not slowing down anytime soon. So
No.
but that's always good. And I think for me, I mean, the biggest thing I've taken from it is kind of how it's affected me and my family. It's very rare that I will kind of be in a show and then kind of learn huge things about myself afterwards.
Like what? What's
just as a
the thing you've
parent,
been left
just as
with?
a parent, I was just like, I realized like I've been a bit too, what's the word, liberal as a parent. Like I've been a bit too easygoing, I guess, with my kids, with devices, screen time, you know, stuff like that. Like I've been, you know, I don't think I understood how dangerous those things can be sometimes. So there are a lot of changes have happened in my house. You know, a lot of conversations between me and my wife just about kind of where we're going with kind of them and how much time they spend on screens and on their iPads and whatever, you know, the stuff that they're doing on there as well that we maybe felt was like quite harmless. Actually, you look deeper into it and you're like, wow, that could lead to this and that could lead to that. So, you know, those sort of changes have happened, and that's kind of been the biggest thing for me, really. And I guess like, I feel like that is part of why it's become so big, because before that, I felt scared to have those conversations with my kids. I felt scared. I'm not scared, but more like I didn't want to make them stand out. Like, you know, their friends are doing it, so it's like, it's fine, right? And, you know, I feel like what Adolescence did was like say to parents, okay, you can all have the conversation now. Like, here's evidence and proof of like the extreme of where it can go if you're not going in their room and checking on them and whatever. And I feel like parents all around the world have kind of gone, whew, okay, now we can discuss this openly without feeling like crappy parents. So, do you know what I mean? So,
I mean, what a positive shift, because it's a hard conversation to have, especially when it's teenagers. And like you say, you don't want them to be a social pariah and not be communicating with their friends in the way that everybody else is. But I think having, you know, it's like the third most viewed Netflix show of all time. It's like, it's global. Like you say, the impact has been huge. So I think to have that collective conversation, it feels powerful, you know. I guess moving forward, does that put a pressure on you to always have that angle on projects you're working on where you know there'll be perhaps social change or cultural change, or is that just too big of an idea?
It's a big idea, but there is a slight pressure. There is like, I do like read scripts now, kind of like, well, what's the angle? What's
the point of this?
How is this going to help the world? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? But you kind of have to put that to the back of your mind. I think if we was thinking about that, having that impact on the world whilst we were making it, I don't think it would have been as good of a show. Like, you always have to go into it trying to make an entertaining project, and let the rest be God's work. Do you know what I mean?
It's so interesting because I guess whether it's music or TV or anything creative, you don't know that you're necessarily making something that's going to be big, that's going to have that alchemy. Did you get a sense of that? Because it's not just, it's got to have, there's so many variables. It's got to have a great script. It's got to have a great team, director. It's got to have the most sensational actors who can bring that story to life. Do you get a sense of that when you're in the midst of it?
Yeah, you do. You kind of, I mean, we knew that it was going to be a great show. Like, there was no doubt about what sort of show it was going to be. I've worked with Stephen Graham for many, many years. Jack Thorne's work is like undeniable. Philip Barantini, I mean, you only have to see Boiling Point to know, do you know what I mean, how good he is at what he does. So it was like the combination was already there. Throwing Erin in the mix. I mean, Shaheen casting. So she's been around for, since I was like a young and kind of casting for stuff. So like all of that, all of the parts were there. So, and on set, it was it was probably the most peaceful, sort of beautiful, spiritual sort of set I've ever been on, really. There was a lot of like moments together, kind of outside of the work, where we all just connected. There was a lot of friends on that set, like real friends. And I say this because a lot of people don't understand. You go into, when you're kind of an actor, you're making films, you're making TV shows, you can literally jump into a job, like, and in the first week, you'll be doing a sex scene with the leading lady or whatever that you don't know.
Yeah.
You don't know these people, right? And you spend like three intense months with them, like every day, more than you're with your family, and then you never see them again.
Yeah.
You're out and you're on to the next one, and that's kind of your life. And it's very rare that you kind of get onto a set where everyone loves each other and everyone knows each other from previous jobs and stuff like that. But that's what this was like. It was like a bunch of my mates.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? That I got to work with. So there was genuine love between everyone anyway. And I think that comes across on screen,
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
Like, there is that sort of palpable magic about it. And I guess also the notion of having one shot, that you're almost combining that element of theatre that, you guys have all got to be on your A game and you're in this together. It's like a proper team effort that I guess brings you together even closer, maybe. Hello, lovely people. I hope that you're enjoying this episode of Happy Place so far. I wanted to show you our Happy Edit box. I love these boxes. They're products from our Happy Place marketplace. You get all of this. It's worth £100, but it's only $29.99. You've got face cream in there, oil, you've got a little piece of artwork, some vitamins, some tampons, some hydration tablets, and more. It's so gorgeous. I'm obsessed with it. All you need to do is click the link in the caption or head to our website to find out more. Yeah,
the stress of it.
I can't even imagine.
It brings you together. Like,
I'd shit myself.
Yeah, I was. I'm not going to lie. Like, most days I was like, I say all the time, I was like going back to my apartment, crumbling as I got out of that cab, as I shut that door, falling on the floor, crying. And then once I finished crying and talking to my wife and her trying to pick me up, script's open and I'm on that script until like early hours of the morning because I just don't want to drop the ball. No. I don't want to be part of the problem. Do you know what I mean? It was a lot of pressure. But funnily enough, it was like after I spoke to Phil a few times, Philip, and he was like, you need to stop caring so much. Do you know what I mean? That he was like, you're taking it too seriously. Like, let go a bit, and just go with it. And actually,
it's hard though, isn't it, when you love something?
Yeah. It was tough. It was tough to just. You got to remember to listen in those sort of situations. Every take was different. If you're thinking about your lines and how you're going to say them, you're not listening. You're not listening to what the other person's saying. And when you're just in it and you're present and you just are the character and you're just going on that journey, and whatever happens, you just go with it. That's when it became a lot easier and a bit more fun for me.
Although I understand that feeling of pressure is not always fun. Like you say, you're on your knees, you're crying. You want this to go well. You don't want to be the person that drops the ball. It does seem, from reading this book that you've written, that I loved reading, I learned a hell of a lot from it.
Thank you.
You do thrive under pressure. That seems to be something that's quite motivating for you.
Yeah. I mean, I've grown up under pressure. I was speaking to someone the other day. I was like, from day dot, my mum has been saying, from when I can remember, you got to work harder than everyone else.
Yeah.
You're a young black boy from southeast London. You're never going to get everything the same way as your white counterparts. It's never going to be this. It's never going to, work harder. And that's the kind of the regime that I was under. Listen, I'm thankful for her being so, putting so much pressure on me, because I wouldn't be sitting here now today if she didn't. But at the time it was tough, and at the time there was sometimes I didn't understand why. Do you know what I mean? I had to do so much. But yeah, I mean, I've grown up under pressure, and really and truly nothing has ever come easy. So actually when things do come easy now, I'm a bit wary about them. I'm like, when someone's just giving you money, or just like, I was like, well, what are the
where's the pain? Where's the suffering?
What's going to come with this?
Yeah,
what are going to be the consequences of this? And it's true, most things that come easy are not worth having too long anyway. I mean, you don't have them too long anyway, and you don't appreciate them the way that you should. So I've always felt pressure was important, but there are still moments where I'm given a pressured sort of situation and I'm reluctant in the beginning, but I always end up jumping out of the plane. I always end up. I
mean, it's apparent in this book, you dedicated, your mum is one of the people that you've dedicated the book to, as well as your wife and your children. And she does seem to be this consistent person in your life who has someone, I think we've all got that person in mind who we're maybe not proving ourselves to, but we're accountable to, that voice in our head constantly. Yeah. And it was really fascinating reading about certainly your younger years, where you definitely had this determination that I'm not sure many other kids had. Like, maybe if you're lucky enough to find something you really know you love early on, a sport or a hobby, you might have that drive. But I think it's quite rare when you're a young kid. But you were actively, constantly trying to move towards your goals, have a better life for yourself, do the thing that you were passionate about, which I do think is unusual. And I guess the sort of jarring element for you growing up was, you had that, you wanted to succeed, you wanted to do well, but then you were also growing up in an environment where violence was commonplace, guns were commonplace, there were gangs, there was threat in your life that you could feel. How did you navigate, I guess, those two quite different parts of yourself?
Role play, acting. I mean, that's where I developed my skill, I guess. There was two different Ashleys. There was the streetwise Ashley that understood where to be, what time to be there, who to be around, I guess. And then there was, Sylvia Young, theatre school Ashley, doing tap, ballet and whatever else on the weekends. And I kept those lives completely separate, because there was a time where what I do now that I can celebrate and talk about openly, I couldn't back in the day. It wasn't seen as, I guess, masculine or like the thing to do at the time. So I separated the two, and my mum was very good at inspiring me without signposting that's what she was doing. It was like a holiday every year, getting me out of the environment. So it's Spain. It's like, not far places, but Dorset, the countryside, like just taking me different places, and books, putting books in front of me to develop my imagination and for me to understand that there was more than just my environment. And it probably seems really like small and simple to people, but especially then, when we didn't have the internet, when we wasn't able to see out of our kind of immediate bubble. It was important to have those kind of references to believe that there was more to life than the place that you saw every day. So I had a real strong understanding of like, there's a world. There's not just Peckham. Like there's a world. There's other stuff going on. There's other cultures. There's other ways of life. However, like I clearly understood that before I even left the home, right? And I noticed that a lot of my friends didn't get that. Like they had already made a decision without knowing it that this was it for them.
Yeah.
So that was before I understood what I wanted to be or what I wanted to do. It was just like I wanted more. And then even going to Sylvia Young, like a lot of my peers there, a lot of my kind of counterparts were like white, middle class, came from really amazing homes in my eyes, and they liked me. So I was like, I would go and stay over at people's houses. You know, these townhouses in West London, like 4-story townhouses with a kitchen in the basement and stuff like that. And that was fascinating to me. And it never made me jealous. It just gave me like this sort of hunger, like, I'm going to have that.
Yeah.
How am I going to get that?
But this is the mindset, you know, the book is all about this mindset, having a winning mindset. And and that's not to be in any way reductive of the stuff you've gone through that's been really fucking hard and stuff that has tripped you up and these big road bumps in life, but you have somehow managed to always have that mentality, maybe go back to that childhood mentality of having hope and having optimism and aspirations. You know, it's not always a given. I think especially when you're down your luck and things are going badly, it's so easy to lose sight of that. Why do you think you've been able to always click back into that sort of mindset?
It's tough to say, but I guess, you know, the idea of like always winning is just about, it's like, it's not like you never lose, because like I've lost a lot, but I've learned from losing. Like I always say, like the biggest entrepreneurs, the most successful business people have failed several times. We just don't hear about it. And the reason why they're so good now is because of those failures. So I've just learned to not look at failure as like the end. You know, actually, it's quite good for me. You know, it's good to drop on my face and feel pain, because for one, I remember I don't want to do that again. You know, and I can see where the bump in the road was and look back at it and work out how to navigate it. And that's all my life has been. And that's all, I mean, essentially what the book is about. That's what Always Winning is about. It's like, let's embrace those bad times, because they've all going to be a part of your journey. And actually, more importantly, the journey is the most fun part.
And you're still on it.
Yeah, I'm still on it. Like, it's still going. Yeah. You know, and I always, whenever I get somewhere that I've wanted to get to, I'm like, this is...
There's another one.
This ain't that great. What's next? Do you know what I mean? You're always trying to get to the next level. Actually, the most fun I've had is the people I've met on the way there, you know, the trials, the tribulations, the growth, like feeling like, wow, I got over that, I got through that, whatever. That is the most important part of it. Like the actual win, the actual trophy, to me anyway, personally, is never that great when I get it. It's like, okay, fine. Like, you know, I enjoyed the other bit of it. And yeah, so that's what I hold on to. And that's like alluding to what you were saying before, like, you know, just about like embracing the pain, embracing like those painful moments when they come up or whatever. My memory quickly goes, yeah, this is good for you. This is good. Don't run away from this. When you feel like you don't want to do something, you should be trying to do it. Yeah, that's what happens. When I get a script come through and I read it and I'm like, this is an amazing script, but this is going to be hard. How am I going to play this character? The accent, the physicality, it's just so much to do. And your mind's going, run away. Go and do Top Boy again. Just do something easy. Do something what you know you're comfortable. Like, you have to fight against that feeling. You have to let your fear push you forward.
Yeah, I mean, it's full on. Because I think also people assume that when you get to a certain level of success or you've had these accolades and achievements, that the failure is perhaps less or that you feel it less. Whereas I think, you just continue to have moments of success and failure constantly. It might look to the outside world like you're on this ascent, but actually it's no less painful. And I absolutely resonate with what you're saying. I've had big periods of like low mental health or everything seemingly just going completely tits up. And at the time, I'm hating it. I don't want to be in that. I don't want to be going through that. But I can look back and go, oh my God, I wouldn't be doing any of this without having been through that. And I wouldn't have any of the resilience that I've hopefully built up, or hopefully a bit of wisdom that's stuck along the way. It's imperative. And your life has been this sort of, like all of us, this sort of undulating wave of ups and downs. And I think when you can get to a place and you can appreciate, not necessarily like celebrate, but appreciate the bits that have been really shit, that's where you start to learn from it. I mean, you've had some big lows and some public ones, and you've talked about it a lot before, but being in prison is a big deal. You were there for 7 months. Looking back on that period, a period that could define your life very negatively forever if you let it, you have managed to turn that into a positive and gain a lot from that period of your life. What do you think has impacted you positively from that experience?
Well, I feel like that was like that was a higher power moment for me. Now I look back on it. I don't think I understood that at the time, but there's been several moments throughout my career where my higher power has done for me what I wasn't willing to do for myself. And at the time, when that's happening, I get very disturbed by like what's going on around me. Like when they shut that prison door on me, I was like, wow, like how did I end up here? In your mind, you're like, I didn't see this for myself, or maybe I did, but like, I'm a good person. Like I'm not meant to be in this situation, but actually, where I was outside of prison, I wasn't meant to be. And I wasn't willing to step away from loyalty, from friends, from brotherhood, from some toxic sort of masculinity that was going on. Like I wasn't willing to step away from it because I wasn't strong enough and I was fearful of what the other side would be like or whatever. So my higher power took it away from me. It said, all right, you're not going to do what you need to do for yourself. There you go. And let me sit down by myself. And it was only in that moment I was like, wow. There's a lot of like my grand's a very spiritual person, very, very religious. And she would never send me any letters talking about how are you or whatever. She'd just send me passages from the Bible, just different passages. To the point that eventually I started to read, because in the beginning I was like, I'm not reading this. It's ridiculous. But eventually, like you got time on your hands. I started reading, and just started understanding kind of this was meant to happen to me. And I think at that point I started to take advantage of the position that I was in. You know what I mean? I was like, I stopped feeling sorry for myself, stopped kind of wondering why I was there or whatever, and said, okay, well, what am I going to do while I'm here? Do you know what I mean? How do I get positivity out of this? I hadn't passed my GCSEs in school. I did pretty well, but I didn't do as good as I wanted to in my English and maths. They were offering GCSEs in there. I took that. I started working in the kitchen. I did a food hygiene course. Do you know what I mean? I was like, let me try and better myself whilst I'm in this environment. And let me sit down and analyze where it went wrong. And I quickly realized like a big part of why I was there was because of the company that I was keeping. And no one in my circle, I looked around me and no one in my circle I actually wanted to be like. I didn't want to be like any of these people. Like, I was more scared of them than anything else. Do you know what I mean? It was like, and I realized that I had to I needed to put myself in a situation where I'm the dumbest sort of person in the room, right? Like where all the people around me, I'm aspiring to. Do you know what I mean? Like I want to copy what they've done. I want to be like them. I want to get to where they are. And that changed my whole mindset. That was like a big thing for me. And that came through books. That came through reading like The Long Walk to Freedom, Nelson Mandela. I read The Scholar by Courtier Newland. Like it was like there was little gems in those books and my granny's letters that really made me understand about that kind of like how I could change things for me immediately. So coming out of prison, that was the first thing I did. I became a recluse to other people, but to me, I was like reevaluating what I wanted to do. And I slowly but surely just distanced myself from the world that I knew. And this is not to say, look, a lot of those people that were around me at the time, I have nothing against them. I still talk to them now. I take relationships for what they are. But I had to do that for me, to change my life. So that for me, it had a huge impact in that way, a positive impact. So I can never look at prison as a bad time anymore. It's kind of like something that had to happen. It was like a cocoon moment, and I came out as a butterfly. Like when I came out of there, I just had a different understanding of myself and the world.
I mean, it's a really scary thing to distance yourself from, we all create these little families for ourselves, people, whether they're good for us or not, but we want to belong. That's all we want. We want to feel like we belong and that we are connecting with other people and that we're loved or supported. And even when we know in toxic relationships, that things aren't right, we have that loyalty because we feel that sense of belonging. To remove yourself, and I know obviously being in prison, you don't have any choice, but coming out and still choosing to press reset, start again, and not have that family, that sense of belonging, that's scary.
Yeah, it is scary. It is scary. That was the first time I'd ever done it.
Yeah.
I realise that now because I was really stuck in a cycle of I felt fear. I felt I needed the people there. There was a lot of crutches and stuff like that going on. Now I reset in a second, man.
Do you?
Oh yeah, I'll reset. Yeah. I'll reset tomorrow if I need to. I'm done. Yeah, it's like no, this is not working. Bye. Like I've got used to that process. My wife, we've moved a few times in our life, right? And she's always concerned about the white goods. Do you know what I mean? I know this is really weird, but just little things that I'm like,
it'll be fine.
Yeah, it'll be fine. Let's
love that it's the white goods.
Yeah, let's just
go.
About
that fridge.
Well, we've got an outhouse which has got 7 freezers in it, 5 microwaves, 4 washing machines, and she's always like, "Well, yeah, we can give that to one of the kids." And that, and I'm just like, "You're a hoarder.
She's hoarding
You're
microwaves.
A hoarder.
This is so good. This is so good.
Just. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. But I think that there's something in not falling into victimhood, which we've all done. Everyone's done it. I probably did it yesterday. There's always a moment where you go, that's not fair. This shouldn't be happening to me. Blame, you point fingers at other people. And I think when you can catch yourself and you're doing it, then you've got the chance to change. And that's where you can change you can change your whole life from that mindset. But, obviously for you, that was an extreme wake-up call for you to have to do that.
Yeah.
But it seems to have set you on a path where there's no other option.
Yeah.
There's no victimhood. It's like, I'm accountable for me and this is how I want to do things.
Yeah, that's the key word, is accountability. And this is not to say, look, I'm not perfect. So there are moments where I'm the victim.
Yeah,
and
we all do it.
I'm complaining and I don't understand why it's going the way it's going or whatever. And you're right. You catch yourself. But I think it gets easier. It gets quicker. It gets more natural for you the more that you do it. Like with anything else. Do you know what I mean? It's like I say to my kids, they're always complaining about things happening quick and why can't I just learn this now and whatever. And it's like, well, nothing happens like that. I was like,
no.
How long have you been, swimming? My kids have been swimming since they were babies. So my youngest 2 are 10 and 8 and they're great swimmers now because we started them swimming early. But I'm like, you don't just jump in the water and swim. You know, there's a process. You have to learn it. So why don't you understand that that same rule applies to learning Spanish? That same rule applies to learning anything else. It takes time. You have to put effort and time into it. And these things are important. And you kind of, you know, it's quite scientific, like what goes on in your head and the kind of the neural pathways that you've kind of consistently been using. So something happens, you're used to doing something, it goes, do you know what I mean? It goes down the same path.
You do the same
every
old
time.
shit.
You do the same thing all the time. And the more you start stopping yourself and going, no, I'm not going to do that. Like month 6, it's going to happen a lot quicker. It's going to be a lot more natural to you. And that's just what's going on. And I guess what's been going on for me. And everyone can start that. Like everyone, you know, this is not just me that can do make any of these changes. It's important for everyone to kind of know that they have that ability. And that's why I wrote the book, because I was like, let me be really honest about why you think I'm so good at what I do. Because I'm no different than you. I may have just had a different plan, right? Or a different set of notes in my iPhone or whatever of how I was going to get somewhere because I understood something. But you can do it as well in whatever walk of life that you're in, you know what I mean?
I mean, this is the book that you wanted to read as a kid. Like, this is the book that
100%,
you could have benefited from.
100%.
I think so much of your story and your resilience and also the different iterations of your career have come from the patience that you've just talked about, knowing that things aren't going to happen overnight, that you've got to put the work in, that you've got to be dedicated to that goal that you've got ahead of you. And we were talking before we started recording. I met you a long time ago in So Solid Crew when you came on Top of the Pops. We probably saw each other a few times around that era. And, you know, you guys were the biggest thing on the scene at the time. Garage music was everywhere. You were the pinnacle. You were it. And, you know, you've constantly reinvented yourself. And then, you know, you start your acting career. You're back on the first rung of the ladder. You've got to start all over again. No one cares that you're in So Solid Crew. This is a film set and you need to learn your craft, earn the respect of the people around you. Yeah. How much are you still willing to do that now? Because, you know, can you get any... I mean, I know you said you've always got these goals. You've always got new things you want to do. But that takes a lot to keep reinventing, to keep pushing yourself in these new areas to be the best you can be.
Yeah, but it's the same as what we were talking about before. It's like, I'm trying to be in uncomfortable spaces because I want to grow. Like the whole thing around acting for me was like, I've never enjoyed acting. Like it's uncomfortable, but more than that, it's awkward for me. Because I have anxiety. Like, I hate being in front of cameras. Like,
this is great.
Yeah, it's like, I look for all the casting directors, still hire me, please. But yeah, so I've always like, you know, before I'm doing a show, I get scared. I'm like working with other people and being in like rooms of a lot of people, whatever. It's difficult for me.
Yeah.
Like no one understands how much of a struggle. Like I see some other actors, they love it. You know, they love that energy and whatever. I get real kind of anxiety around those situations. So to get up and go to work every day for me is difficult. And then also acting, I know the process so much. I know the process so well. And I think I was doing Top Boy. I love Top Boy, so I don't want people making comments about like that I'm disrespecting the show. I love the show. But it got boring for me, like playing that same character. You know, I started when I was like 27 or something playing Deshane and finished nearly at 40 years old. Like it was a long time. And I lost a lot of love throughout that process for acting. So I decided I wanted to become a director. Do you know what I mean? Because I would go back to the first rung again. No one didn't give a crap about who I was as an actor. It was like, nope, you're still starting from the bottom. We're still not paying you any money. Do you know what I mean? It's like, You've got to pay your dues. That directing community was still like, Oh, here we go. Oh, yeah, another
yeah.
actor trying to be like one of us. Do you know what I mean? You're in that space again.
Yeah.
And I love that.
Yeah.
Secretly, you know, I'm not shouting it from the rooftops, but I'm like humble. Like, yeah, I'm going to learn. I'm going to kiss ass. I'm going to follow these people and go to these events and whatever. And I'm really enjoying being in that space.
It's learning, isn't it? It's I feel the same. I need to constantly be learning and constantly be, I guess, constantly sort of shitting myself. Like that feeling you talk about of the anxiety of doing your job. I certainly have it. I have this deep sense of relief that I almost look forward to at the end of a day like this, where I've got 2 podcast recordings. I'm engaged, I'm loving it in the moment, but beforehand I'm like, I want this to go well more than anything. I'm desperate for this to go well. I want to be on my A game. I don't want to feel anxious or awkward in it. And then at the end of the day, the relief is the best feeling ever. And sometimes I wonder, is that enough? Just feeling relieved? Like, surely I need to get to a place where there's more comfort. But I think it's a delicate balance between comfort and complacency. And I've definitely been there. Like when I was at Radio 1, again, like with your Top Boy, I loved Radio 1, you know, very grateful for that experience. But I was complacent. It was easy to do that show. I knew I could do it with my eyes closed, and I don't like that feeling. But I think it's hard to get, what's the middle ground? There's like shitting yourself or complacency. Where's that sweet spot? It's hard.
There is a balance. There is a balance. But I do feel like it's natural for us to kind of get somewhere and at some point feel like we need a new challenge. Like, who says that we should just stay in the same place forever?
I agree.
You know, I'm like, I just started learning Spanish like 6 weeks ago. Yeah. I mean, I'm terrible still, but I've had 6 weeks of real.
That's just for fun. This is not for a job.
No, this is just because I'm like,
why not?
Yeah, you know, I want to challenge my mind.
Yeah.
I've always wanted to learn another language.
Yeah.
So why not? But that's part of it. It's part of like just challenging yourself and pushing yourself as much as you can. I think, you know, I feel like successful people have that in common.
Yeah.
You know, that want to always. So the minute you start to feel comfortable, that's when it feels really awkward for me. That's where it feels like, you know, I'm sure when you started at Radio 1, when you first got in front of that desk.
Oh, terrifying.
Or whatever, it was terrifying. I mean, I actually did a, what do they call it, a pilot.
Yeah.
For One Extra, one of these like many, many years ago. And that was like, I mean, I was terrible.
I was when I started.
But it was like, it was the most difficult thing.
It's so hard.
Do you know what I mean? I've ever done. So you achieved something real great, like to go from that uncomfortability, do you know what I mean? Being in that space to at the end of it where you're like, I could literally kind of just dial this in, like if I wanted to. So it's I guess it's done.
Yeah, exactly. And then you find a new challenge.
Yeah.
I totally agree. I mean, in the book, you talk a lot about your relationship with self-sabotage as well, which again, I think is a massive block for so many people who have got goals, dreams, aspirations, is that they fall before the first hurdle, which is that self-sabotage of, you're a piece of shit, you can't do this, imposter syndrome, everything that comes with it. Where are you at with that today? Because it's taken on different forms in your life as well. It could have been, you know, you've talked about in the book lots of different moments on set where you don't feel like you've been at your absolute best and you've been called out for it. You also talk about addiction problems, which is something you're perhaps just comfortable talking about now but hadn't been previously.
Yeah.
That seems like a form of self-sabotage that took its hold more than you would have liked.
Yeah, I feel like that the addiction for me was more about like trying to be able to be someone, right? To be the person that could perform. So actually, and this is going to be really strange, and I don't want people to take it the wrong way, but it was needed for a period of time. You know, the imposter syndrome within me was so great that I wouldn't have turned up if I wasn't drunk or high, like sometimes, you know. It got really bad towards the end and it took me the other way. So actually I did stop turning up. Do you know what I mean? Because it was that bad for me, because I didn't want people to see me in such a bad way. But in the beginning, it was great. You know, a lot of addicts will tell you this. It worked for a long period of time for me. And that's why people didn't know. They like, because it was helping me. It was aiding me. It was giving me the strength and the confidence to speak to people that I was shit scared of speaking to be in rooms that I felt I didn't deserve to be in. It gave me all those things for a long period of time until it didn't. But it was never, you know, that's one thing I realized as soon as I got help. It was never about the drink or the drugs. You know, for all the time that I was kind of trying to stop doing it, I was always blaming the drink and drugs. I was always like, why can't I stop? It's got a hold of me. You know what I mean? You're like, that's how I saw it, as like such an evil thing. But no, when you think about it, there's loads of people in this world that can drink and take drugs and lead really decent lives. I had a problem within me from before those things ever came into my space. And that was my self-belief. That was my, you know, it felt like that, like, and it's probably quite cliche, but it felt like everyone else had a memo or got a memo that I just didn't receive. Like, everyone else had the manual to life. I didn't get it. So I'd be in spaces and I'd be like, how the fuck are they, like, how can they talk to each other like that? How comes they take each other's numbers and maintain relationships after? Because I just didn't know how to do any of, like, the normal stuff. Like, it just wasn't, I just didn't have it in me. And the minute I found drink, the minute I found drugs, the minute I realized that wasn't frowned upon in my circle and where I worked, I was gone. You know, I was like, I can fit in now. Like, and now I'm part of the gang. Actually, I'm the leader. You know what I mean? I was like the life of the party. I'm the one getting everyone out. I'm making the moves. But addiction has a funny way of, like, you know, it wants to isolate you. It will eventually isolate you. And that's what happens, you know, all of the yets that I said, you know, well, how can I be a drunk? I'm not sleeping on a park bench yet. You know, I'm not begging or stealing anyone's money. So how can I be a drug addict yet? You know, the minute, like, those things started to creep into my lifestyle, sometimes even when I didn't have to do any of that stuff, the problem was, you know, it was evident. It was like, it was there. And I think the clincher was family, you know, destroying the people around me, you know, not just hurting them, but destroying the people around me, because I had taken control of everything that had happened. You know, when we were just talking about higher power, and I was very spiritual before, you know, understanding that, okay, maybe this happened for a reason, or the way I got into Soul Solid, all those things, I was able to articulate about those things. Like, that was divine. That was like universal law. Like, I started thinking about it. I knew I was a fan of the group before I was in the group. And I said, one day I'm going to be in that group. And I would say that to myself every day. And I would, do you know what I mean? And I gradually got closer to it. All of that stopped when drugs and drink came into my life. And I became God. You know, this was down to me. This is all happening because of me. You have a car and a house because of me. You have, you know what I mean, those clothes on your back because of me. You know, and that's the person I became to my kids, to my wife, you know, to my mum. And yeah, that was a sad time. It was, you know, it was a very difficult space for everyone else to be in. And I wasn't seeing it. Yeah. I wasn't seeing it, you know. I was turning up to family events and turning up to places, and people wouldn't talk to me. You know, they'd be like, hi, kind of walk past and whatever. And I'm like, the hell is wrong with you? It's only now I'm sober and I've sat down with those people and they feel free to talk to me about what happened in the past, that they're like, I was shit scared of you. Because don't you remember that time when you smashed everything up in the kitchen, or you did this, or you did, do you know what I mean? It's like, oh, okay, I get it. You know what I mean? I get it. Like, I mean, I probably can't remember the amount of times I hurt people that were close to me throughout that period of time. And, you know, you feel so guilty for it. I was talking about this yesterday, but I was saying, like, the way I've got better is by understanding that I have to wipe the slate clean. I had to clean my side of the street and then draw a line in the sand and beg people to move forward with me, you know, and let them know that I'm going to make amends every day. Yeah. You know, this will never stop me being in debt to you. You know, I'm not saying I'm out of your pocket. I'm just saying that you have to give me a chance now, you know. And that's been tough for everyone, because it's very easy for the person in recovery to be like, well, I'm changed. Come on, everyone. Why are we not smiling and dancing? And do you know what I mean? And everyone's like,
yeah,
how dare you?
Yeah. But it's amazing you've got that, again, ability to see from everyone else's angle and to also be humble and to say, you know, please come with me on this journey, you know, and ask for that permission. I think that's quite a rare thing to do. At what point, because it's so difficult, isn't it? When you're so in the trenches with addiction and, you know, it's your day to day, it's your coping mechanism. Like you say, I think so many people who have fallen into addictive patterns or who are addicts have huge social anxiety. Like you say, don't feel like they've got the manual to life, and it's a coping mechanism. And it might not just be drugs and alcohol. It could be, you know, for me, it was like I had eating disorders growing up and all sorts of coping mechanisms that were making things worse. But you don't know it when you're in it. You're just coping. You're just trying to survive. At what point did you think, oh, I might use the word addict here, because that's a big deal to step into that space rather than, like you say, I'm just drinking, I'm having a good time, I'm out, you know, I'm partying and I'm turning up to work and people are embracing me. At what point do you go, this is addiction?
It was the lack of control, I think, that kind of made me understand after a few attempts. It was that whole, I like, even in my addiction, I was highly functional. Like, as a, you know, outside my house, I was still turning up for work. I still had the ability to, all right, I'm stopping at 6. I go to work. I come back at 6. All right, I'm free to do what I want now. Like, I could do that. But the minute I went, all right, I'm going to go to the pub and have 2 drinks and then come back. And then I wouldn't come back for a week. I was like, at some point, I was like, oh, hold on. I'm weak here. Do you know what I mean? It's like there's something that is controlling me. Like, I cannot control what's going to happen once I put a drink in me. And I couldn't stop.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like for anything. So you got your kid's birthday party. You got, you know, there's things and people that you have to turn up for. I couldn't make it. I couldn't make it. I couldn't, you know, I couldn't give those things the attention that they needed. And that's when it was very clear to me. Even though I didn't speak it, I didn't admit it, I knew in myself, like, all right, this is, you know, I'm done. Like, it's got me.
Yeah.
Like, I'm gone here. It's only going to be people giving me help that is going to be able to get me out of this. It's not one of those famous sort of Ashley turnarounds that can happen in this moment anymore. It's gone way beyond that point.
Yeah.
So all I was really waiting for, well, not waiting for it, but what was needed was a catalyst, was they call it a rock bottom, right? And I feel like I had several already that didn't seem to work. But the one that did was my daughter. It was my daughter was 6 at the time. And she knocked on the door in the house where I was kind of isolating. And she said, I want you to leave. Like, very mature statement for her to make. She looked at me and she was like, I don't want you to live here anymore, Daddy. And that broke me. I was done. I was like, oh my gosh. I mean, bear in mind, for context, I'd had a previous relationship before this. I had older kids that were already not talking to me because of my drink problems and my addiction. So I just saw the cycle repeating. I was like, this was meant to be a new start for me. I was meant to be, being a better parent, a better person, a better partner. And I was just repeating all the same mistakes again. But when she said that, yeah, it just changed everything for me. And it was like that night, I rang someone for help. That someone introduced me to someone else. And by the next day, I was in rehab. I was gone, and that was one thing that I never wanted to do. I really didn't want to do that because I'd seen the others before me, in the papers. This person goes to rehab again, this, that, whatever. You see all the front page and the tabloids and whatever. And I was like, I don't want to be that guy. And I've managed to keep out of the papers, The amount of times I'd put myself in such crazy situations. I should have been plastered all over the papers from way before that point, but I'd managed to stay below the radar. So it was like, do I want the world to know, what I've been going through? No one sees me as that person. But getting help was more important, so I took the leap. And that changed my life, changed my life.
And also being able to talk about it where we've not got time or room for shame in this conversation. We've got to have these open chats about addiction and getting help and the depths that it takes you to, massive hats off talking about it in this book and in this podcast today, because so many people are affected by it, whether it's them going through addiction, family members going through addiction, having parents that are, addicts. It's really hard. So I think having this chat where you're being so open and honest is so powerful. It's so powerful. And I think, not only are you able to break cycles in your own family lineage and your own patterns and seeing that you're making that positive change, but that ripple effect, I think, is massive.
Yeah.
Massive.
I mean, I feel like that's the only reason why I've done this, to be honest. Who knows whether the book's going to sell or not or whatever. It was just like, I always knew once I was like proper in recovery that at some point I need to speak about this. Because actually what I witnessed was a lot of people that come from where I come from, especially in the Black community, it's quite taboo. To talk about this stuff. Like, it's taboo to talk about like having counselling or therapy or do you know what I mean? It's like, it's not a thing like that a lot of us are comfortable talking about openly or even doing. So that level of vulnerability from someone like me, I guess, could be an inspiration for someone else to see that they can do it. Do you know what I mean? And not be ridiculed for it. So I just felt like, it's important that I document these sort of things. I talk about this experience, and there must be more to me being able to make that change than me being able to make that change. This must be relevant to other people. So many people. You're now 4.5 years clean, is that right? Yeah, correct. Yeah, I'll be 5 years in November. It's a beautiful thing. It's 1 hour, it's one day at a time. It's never like a foregone conclusion that it will always be this way, but I feel pretty confident in myself about it, and I'm living my best life now, man. It's no coincidence that all of these things that have been happening, when I say around like adolescence and, obviously the book and like just the stuff that I'm doing, is part of the gift of my sobriety, and I have a lot of, I found a community of people in my workspace that have been in the same position as me. And, you know, it's so weird because I was saying before about not having the manual and not feeling a part of anything and desperately looking for these tribes in the wrong places throughout my life. It's like, actually, I found it here, you know? I feel so comfortable. I got people on the end of the phone that I can call that I know love me, and I love them back just as much. And it's like, it's all worked out pretty well, you know? So
that's so great.
It's where I was meant to be.
Yeah, it's so amazing. On that note, because it does seem like you're, you know, who knows where you're going to go next? It just seems like you could do whatever the hell you want. Like, you've got this drive and this determination and so much passion and oomph and clarity, it seems, as well at this point in your life. Where would you say is your happy place? Can you pinpoint it to either a place or it could be a mindset? What does that mean for you?
I pretty much know you've had other people say this, but for me, it's the gym.
Yeah.
I know it's like boring, I guess, but it's the gym.
Yeah.
It's the gym is where I evaluate everything. Like, my mind works. So even though I'm doing loads in there, my thinking process, I'm not thinking about what I'm doing. I'm thinking about what I need to do. Do you know what I mean? Like, and how that experience felt for me and the things that I can change, and who I need to be doing more for, who I should do less for. Like, all of that sort of self-analysis.
It's your little thinking
and evaluation happens in there.
Yeah.
And and I've learnt to really love that. Like, I mean, even before I kind of got help with my addiction and stuff, I started running. I was just like, throughout lockdown actually, and I was just running. I was like running 20K a day and just like, I was just
20K?
Yeah, because it was space. Yeah. It was just space away from it. And it's
I love that you didn't just start with like a 5K, just straight for the 20.
It started with like 5 or maybe 3 even, but it built up, and I just kind of, you know, I would just run and be thinking about myself and stuff, and then look up, and, you know, I'd gone from Crouch End and I'd be in London Bridge, and I'm like, shit, I've got to go home.
I've got to do the 20K back.
So now I've got to go back. So that's how it kind of built up, and that kind of turned into gym, and just understanding that it's been so powerful for my mental health.
Yeah.
So now we bought a place in Kent. We've got like a huge outside space, and I built a gym.
Love it.
And I'm just like,
there's no excuse. It's there.
Yeah,
it's in the garden.
It's there, and sometimes I go in there. I don't even train. Do you know what I mean? Hang out. I sit down, and I get my head stuff done. Yeah. You know, because I feel like sometimes we can easily forget about ourselves. You know, when you're in like you're in a position where you're kind of taking care of a lot of people. You want to be selfless a lot, and you want to do for others and whatever, but you can't forget that it starts with you. I think even in the book, I use the analogy about being on a plane and those oxygen masks coming down, and they say to you as the parent, make sure you put yours on first before you put it on your kid. And in the beginning, I was always like, huh? So obviously I'm going to save my kid first. Yeah. But it's like, well, no, not if you're passed out. You ain't going to do anything for anyone. Nope. You know, so it starts with you, and I start with me, and let that trickle down to everyone else.
Yeah, it's a very good place to start, because I think so many of us are burnt out, especially when you've got kids, you're working. I mean, you've got 8 kids. Yeah. You've got a lot of people to look after, and you've got a thriving career. You know, it's a lot. You do have to have that time out to go, am I actually okay? How am I feeling? Am I all right? I mean, it's utterly impossible, in fact, to cover the entirety of your story and your life and everything that's in this book in an hour. We've packed a hell of a lot in, but there's so much more. I urge people to read this book. Certainly, if you feel like you want to really dive into that motivation and drive that we've all got the potential to have, but we've got these blocks, it is the perfect, I took so much from it, and stuff to just really get my head in a good space with focus. It's a brilliant book. So congratulations, and thank you so much, Ashley.
Thank you for having me.